welcome to another episode of Inquiring Minds. I'm your host, Steve Harper, and with me, as always, is my amazing co-host, Donna Carlin. Donna, how are you doing today?
I'm really looking forward to this one, so I'm pumped.
I
Get
am
ready.
too. I'm very excited. I get excited anytime we have a conversation because, I know you're hearing it. I'm hearing it. People that are paying attention to the podcast and to the videos that we're putting up on YouTube and Facebook, they're really digging it. And we're really getting some great responses. And most importantly, we're kicking off some great conversations that are happening offline in their own worlds, which just, thrills us to no end. But what are we talking about today?
So this is a good one. Is everyone around you clear about who you are, you included?
Ooh, this is good. I mean, we have a couple of topics that we've put on a list that we just have dug in and we know that we want to have these conversations. This one is interesting because I think you absolutely have to be clear about who you are in order to educate and help people form the right opinions of who you are out there in the world. And I think that's kind of important because I think a lot of times, at least from my perspective, we end up trying to fit into the box that other people create for us, right? Instead of being super clear about who we are and how we represent ourselves out there in the world. So I'm really curious as to your interpretation of this, and this is gonna be a fun conversation.
I remember posting something years ago saying, don't try to put people in boxes, they just won't fit.
That's true.
Boxes, labels, anything that others put on you to put you into some kind of category or label you as something. And when I teach, it's really something, because somebody said to me, how in the world do you work with politicians? Because, the constituents are going to say they're supposed to know what they're doing. They shouldn't need a coach to help them do it. And I said, do athletes know what they're doing? Do they suck at what they're doing and therefore they don't need a coach?
Yeah.
Do orchestra musicians aren't they amazing at what they do? Don't they need a coach and a conductor? Like it goes for every single profession. Why not politics?
Sure.
The thing is, if the media gets hold of this, they could really do a number on the politician and my career, because I'm apolitical. I have to be, because I could work with anybody who wants to grow in their field. It's not for me to say, they're following what I want them to do. So I have a deal with the media not to film me, not to refer to me. They call me whatever they want. I don't have to be called coach. I don't have to be called shadow, which is, what I do. Nothing, I don't want that label because the label gets in the way of the work that I'm going to do. Right. So,
Right.
But the second thing is I can't be the end all and be all to everybody in this world.
True.
I have to
Yeah.
be true to myself, in which case I could give my authentic self to those that I am interacting with, working with, in relationship with, whatever. So the question is, who's in your head? We talked about this in one of our previous
Sure did.
episodes.
Yeah.
Who's in your head? Who's telling you who you should be, need to be, what you have to do? Is it your story that you're writing or somebody else writing it for you? That's, I think, the core of the question. What do
Yeah,
you
I agree.
think?
Yeah, I agree. In fact, you bringing up that episode, I encourage our audience to go back and listen to that one because it was a really powerful conversation, but it also is pretty telling about how easy it is for our mind to play tricks on us and allow us to default to the thinking of others. And you don't want to do that because if you're doing that, you're living somebody else's reality. Like you said, you're allowing them to dictate and write the story of your life as opposed to you writing your own. And so I think waking up to that appreciation and that understanding is really critical. And the earlier you can do that in your life and in your career, the better off you're going to be because it's I think an essential element. And as we take on this particular topic for this episode, stopping and asking yourself that question, who's in your head, is a really powerful way to say, okay, how's my thinking being framed today? How are my decisions being fostered and
Yeah.
grown? Am I making these, based on what I should do or what I want to do, or am I allowing somebody else's judgment and thought process to enter in here? And that has some derivative to come back to who you feel you are out there in the world. You know, if you're uncomfortable in your own skin, you're unsure of where you're headed or what you're doing, you allow yourself to be a little bit more malleable to other people's push in direction of what you do. And that's not always a good thing. In fact, most of the time, it's not a good thing at all. Difference between that and say what we do as coaches, right, is one of the things that we're trying to do is to help, sort of, knock that bird out of the nest, if you will, and realize that, oh, these wings, they work. If I can take flight, if I have that courage, if I take that step forward, if I can do it, then really positive things can happen. And we're there to support them. There's bumps along the way, and there's always challenges with our confidence level. But we really, I think if you do a good job as a coach, you're really helping that person figure out who they are at their core. Like you said, on a prior episode, I don't remember which one, but it's not our job to help you, form you into who we think you should be. Where our job is to help you become who you were destined to be.
That's right. I will never forget a conversation I had with somebody. Oh, it's got to be 20 years ago at this point. I was working with a colleague of this woman, vice president in an organization, and she asked if we could meet for lunch. And I knew her from meetings that I was in. I just did not work with her specifically. Mm-hmm. And I said, sure, because she intrigued me. She was the only female vice president on the team. And it was interesting to see why she wanted to meet. And we sat down at lunch. We had a very short period of time to meet. And I asked her, was there a specific reason she wanted to meet, or just, to get to know each other? And she looked at me and said, you really know who you are. I've never seen anything like it, and I want to be there.
Yep.
And I was so taken aback, and I asked her, what do you mean by that? She said, you speak to presidents, leaders of countries, in the same way as you would speak to your brother. I've never seen anything like it. You don't defer to them because of their role and their title. You speak to everybody with enthusiasm, with honesty. I have never seen anything like it because you know who you are. Mm-hmm. And we talked about that right through lunch. What that means to her is different than what it means to me, but nobody has ever brought that up as a subject until you posed the question this morning. And I think it's really important. Are you clear of who you are?
Yes. And that question right there is one you can sit with and you can think on and you can really dig in. And if you get to the point where you go, I really don't know, that's the time to seek out a coach. That's the time to, and some of us don't know, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It just means that we haven't got to that point where we can truly feel comfortable in answering yes. And therefore that becomes hard and challenging for other people to. Say that again?
What comes to mind actually is the question, are you more comfortable with answering, who aren't you?
That's a really good question. Because knowing who you aren't helps you figure out who you are, and so it's beautiful.
You ask somebody the question, are you clear with who you are? And they'll tell you a laundry list of everything they can't do.
Yes.
Everything that they're not good enough in doing, everything that they failed at over time. And I want to hit my head against the wall because I don't want to know who they aren't, who they think they aren't.
Right.
I want to know, how could they be more of who they are? Can't build on who they are until they answer that question or really are clear about who they are.
Yep.
Individually. And then I'll say to them, okay, your homework is to speak to your closest friends, your family, your kids, whatever it is, and ask them if they could tell you the parts of you that just shined for them and examples for that. What would they be? And just listen. Don't say, oh, that was nothing. None of those minimizers.
Yeah.
Just listen. Then we'll start looking at, are you clear with who you are?
Yes. That's a great point. And certainly some, Yeah, delicious tidbits there to apply, I think, for our audience for sure. I was thinking back, you mentioned your conversation with that vice president. I had a similar one yesterday where I had met someone for coffee that I've known a few years. He is tremendously talented and very, very knowledgeable, and he he is very much a high level thinker and has done some amazing things with his career. And if you were to see both of us, you would be like, why is he talking to Steve? This guy should be out solving world problems or something to that degree. But he said something yesterday that really kind of drove this home for me today, which was pretty amazing. He said, why do you even take the time to talk to me? And, on the surface, you could feel like a little bit on your back heel because it's like, here's this gifted, talented individual that's out solving world problems. And, he's super important. And so it's easy for you to put yourself back in that own box of like not being worthy, right? Of spending time. And maybe 5 years ago, I would have said, I don't know, I'm just lucky to be in your world, trying to be self-effacing and self-deprecating really. And probably didn't have the confidence to really be sitting across the table from this individual. But at the end of the day, yesterday, when I said, well, because I learn something new every time that we get together, but at the same time, I hope I also teach you something. And he said, that's the thing, is his entire career, he has never felt comfortable with anybody because they either wanted something from him or they were either trying to, paint him into a picture of, this high level thinker. Nobody ever took the time to get to know him. And he said, you're the only person that doesn't, put me in a position to feel like I have to justify the work I do or what I've done, or that is just completely in awe of all that I've done. You just are here to be a good friend, good listener, and you're confident in who you are. So it was really interesting you shared the story about the vice president because I remember thinking at the moment, I'm like, wow, he's paying me a compliment saying like, you're comfortable in your own skin to be here and to be able to have this conversation. And you give me the space to have this fun, engaged conversation as well. And there's no errors. There's no titles. There's no pecking order here. It's just two guys having a cup of coffee and on meeting each other at the same level. And so I think that finally at that point, it kind of hit me. And part of the reason that question kind of resonates for me today is, when you feel that, it's the most empowering thing in the world when you can say, look, yep, I belong here. Just like with you and the politicians, everybody puts their pants on the same way. Nobody's even more important than the other. They may have job responsibilities that are different than yours, and they may have the weight of the world hanging on their shoulders in some capacity. But we're just human, and we're just, we're more alike than we are different.
That's it. And we celebrate the differences in my world anyway.
Right.
We celebrate the differences. If you try to be somebody else, who's going to be you? I mean, let's face it.
That's
the
right.
world
That's
needs
exactly
you.
Right.
And I tell people that you might say 500 people do what I do. What's the big deal? My answer is 500 people might do similar work to what you do, but your life experiences is what makes it different. Your personality and how you approach things is what makes it different. Like you, Steve, your ability to truly listen and be present and witness what the person is saying and not saying makes you different. Yeah. And that's why you are invaluable when it comes to people who might not trust others, who think that there's a hidden agenda. And the higher up they get, the less they trust that people want to be their friend, be their friend. So when you could just look them in the face and say, seriously, is that what your intention was? Like to totally demolish somebody in the moment? Okay, I got it. To call them on behavior that people will start saying, okay, they think they're on a pedestal, don't play by the same rules. Yeah. All the boxes, right, that people are put in based on who they are. But the caveat here is, are you clear about who you are? Has nothing to do with what you do. It's not about what you do. It's who you are. Yep. Because you do what you are. You have a great value system. You have a great sense of who you are, and you honor that. What you do will be colored by that. Your stable value system, all of it.
That's beautifully said. I mean, and you are more than just your job. You're also more than your past accomplishments. You're also more than your future accomplishments. But you are, if you can be comfortable in your own skin to show up and say, I am the authentic, self. I am what I get. I may not be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. Some folks like coffee. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
that you also have to recognize that that's fine too, because that's the beautiful aspects of the world. There are so many of us that have so many different, views and perspectives, and we are different in a lot of ways. But when you do hit on the fact that you have a lot of oneness with the people that get it, it's magical. So you had it with that vice president. I had it yesterday with my friend, and it's the most rewarding aspect of your life. And so, as we wrap up, I think encourage our audience to really think about that and think about this question for themselves and come back to us. Let us know what your thoughts are. What are you thinking about this topic? Did this conversation, tick a box for you? Did it, encourage you to think a different direction? Are you struggling with the confidence of, hey, am I quite, where I think I need to be at this juncture? Donna and I would love those comments so that we can either engage you if you feel comfortable publicly or perhaps, offline. We both would avail ourselves to have that conversation because we think it's so important, because I think that's how you live a life that's more fulfilling, is figuring out who you are early and often. And, it's just an important aspect of that growth factor.
For sure.
So Donna, how do folks that are either watching on YouTube, Facebook, or maybe catching this on one of the podcast platforms, first and foremost, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to Inquiring Minds, but how do they get a hold of us to propose other topics that they might like us to cover, or if they have a take on this particular topic that they'd like us to come back and circle back on, how could they get a hold of us?
Well, definitely comment on the YouTube channel, because we're happy to respond. We have a Facebook group, Inquiring Minds with Donna Carlin and Steve Harper. And, it's great to get your comments there and any suggestions for further conversations that you'd like us to have. We welcome those. And go to our websites, ripplecentral.com for Steve and donnacarlin.com for me. Our social media is there. There's ways for you to contact us through our websites. We want to hear from you. We appreciate hearing from you.
Absolutely. Very much. Well, Donna, this has been fascinating as always. I can't wait for our next conversation, and I hope you have a fantastic day.
You too.
All right. Take care.